Good evening and welcome to the 30th meeting for the Milton Planning Board for fiscal year 2025. At this time, I would like to now call the meeting to order. We can begin by introducing the board members and our staff this evening. If you'd like to start.
Cheryl Tagayas, Secretary.
Mag Yule, Field Member.
Jim Davis, member.
And on Zoom, we have Sean.
Diane.
Yeah, Sean.
Okay. We have Sean Fahey and Meredith Hall serving as chair. For staff this evening, Cheyenne.
Diane Frazier, Assistant Director of Planning.
Great. And Julia?
Julia Getman, Clerk.
Great. Thank you and welcome to all. Our first item, we can begin with our administrative items. We have our next upcoming meeting dates. We will be meeting on Tuesday with the MBTA discussion, bringing you Teal back for that agenda item. And then we have our following regularly scheduled meeting for the March 27th. So those will be the next two regular scheduled meetings. Staff update, Cheyenne, I don't know if you want to say a few words about the community forum for East Milton Square that we had and any other items that you have.
Yeah,
Quickly, Meredith, sorry to interrupt. Would you just say what the date is for the Tuesday meeting?
The 18th
Okay.
of March, sorry.
And do you want to just let folks know that there will be opportunity for questions and comments on
Yes.
the 18th?
Yes. And for those who may have known, 10 Bassett Street is that public hearing that was scheduled will be being moved tonight. So if you're joining us with interest on the 10 Bassett Street public hearing, that will be moved to April 10th. So thank you on that, just to save people from sitting through unnecessarily. So Cheyenne, yes, anything that you would like to add for staff update?
So Tuesday we had our community forum over at the Milton Arts Center. That was regarding our East Milton Square overlay that we are planning to send to town meeting. I thought it went really well. We got some great questions, really good feedback for the public. So I'm glad everybody was able to come out. Other updates. The Ice House project is starting to market. So once we get that lottery information, we'll throw that up on the website. And then this was kind of like a question from engineering to the board, which you don't have to answer it now, just maybe an email. But they were just wondering if the board has approved any new roads since 2018. So if you remember any new roads, if you could send me an email.
Any new roads? I was having trouble hearing that. Could you just repeat that, Cheyenne?
Yeah, any new roads throughout town. They're doing some sort of kind of monitoring project. So they're wanting to update their records. And the last time they had kind of like a road record check was in 2018. So they were wondering if we had anything new since then.
We definitely had Woodlot Drive.
Okay, Woodlot.
Woodlot Drive would
Is
be
Windermere new? Down off of Brush Hill?
Walcott.
Walcott
Walcott.
Woods, yeah.
But I don't think we approved that necessarily as a new road. Yeah.
I don't recall actually if that's a private road or going to be accepted as a
Yeah, I think it's
public
private.
road. But
And then
definitely Woodlot
Yeah, and then
was.
that other one off Ford Ranch by me.
I can research
yeah.
this.
Yeah, let's.
And then
That
Joe
would be great,
Kathleen
Julia.
Way, I think, is becoming a public way
Okay.
because of the animal shelter thing.
Yeah. All right. So Julia said she can research that through the DPW and find out too. All right. Thank you, Julia, for taking care of that. Any other updates, Cheyenne?
Nope, just those three.
Okay. And I just wanted to just clarify, last Friday, there was, as part of an update, because Cheyenne was in attendance, and I didn't ask her to speak, but on Friday, we received an email from Nick Milano that there had been a meeting request to meet with HLC by Senator Bill Driscoll and Representative Wells, and that Cheyenne was invited to attend the meeting, the town administrator, and myself to represent the planning board. And I was allowed to bring one other person, and I asked Sean Fahey, who had actually met with HLC previously. So they'd met with when Timilty was still our senator. So the meeting essentially was, the overview of the meeting was to really present the comments that we had, that our planning board had prepared. I brought copies again just of our comment letter and the maps that we had created with the 3-acre, with the half-mile, the 3 parcels with near the commuter lines. So I would say overall it was a really productive conversation. Meeting in person it was nice to have that dialogue where I think we could listen to HLC's position and they could listen to Milton and the challenges that we have had and that we've been struggling with in creating the districts. The fact that we have so much of our land is built out and so much is conservation land that we run into on all of our boundaries. We run into DCR and conservation restrictions, and sort of explaining parcel sizes and basically all the things that we had put into our comment letter were just explained a little bit more, more in detail. So they were definitely listening, and I think we will get some feedback. And when we get to the next Tuesday, I think they are going to allow us to do some districts that are less than 5 acres. Wow. Which will be great. Which will be helpful because that was part of what we had put into our comment letter was part of our struggle, not only finding areas of open space, but finding the things that would meet the criteria of the half-mile, the contiguity, and certain other challenges that we had highlighted. And it was just a positive conversation. So following the litigation, it was nice. Just to open that door. And Cheyenne and actually Nick had met with Zoe and HLC to talk about some of those districts that we were wanting them to explore to see if they would be acceptable. So thank you, Cheyenne, for having those conversations too. So that I just wanted to update, and Cheyenne was great to come in and to go in. So that was just wanted to update that. And then, so
can I just ask you, did they
Sure.
give an indication of when they're going to issue the final regulations?
they're working on it, and they said soon. They're still reviewing things. They should come out soon, but they did not. They said that they have a tremendous, I wanted to say like 864 comment letters that they're reviewing right now. And they said, we're reading all of them. It was good that they had read ours, and we reiterated that, the importance of that. But they said they're working. There's 150 towns still to be compliant, and that they're working to get those done as soon as they can. But
Okay.
so things may change on those. We're yet to see. So and so it was good. It was productive, and we could explain the challenges that we've had and the challenges that in our town. So, but that we're working to get to compliance. So that was the message we delivered. So
Was Ed Augustus there, or did he pop in?
no, it was Chris Kletchman was sort of the lead, and then Nate, who's the compliance officer, and then Seth, another.
Excellent.
It was senior staff, but Ed was not in the meeting. So yeah. So good. So Cheyenne, was there anything else that you wanted to add, or was that it?
No, that was everything.
Okay, great. So now we can open our public hearing for 0 Blue Hill Ave, reopen, parcel B7-5, continued from 2020. And welcome.
So Meredith,
Yeah.
can I just clarify, we actually closed the public hearing?
I'm sorry, we did close the public hearing.
Yeah.
So I'm reading off of what it says. So we closed the public hearing.
To you before we started.
Yeah.
Make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah.
Because
Good. Yes,
did
we had
close
closed
it.
that public hearing, and now we're reviewing the decision this evening. So Cheyenne, if you want to sort of tee this up, you've been working on the draft decision, and we can bring that up on the screen.
So I can bring it up on the screen, but what we worked out was I sent the school the draft from the Goddard School, and their attorney worked on it, and then I added some dates that were missing, and then town council added, and then Cheryl added. So really, their attorney wrote it, and then I just proofread it.
Right, and then
But
we're putting
yeah,
our
and then
edits.
everybody. Yep. So I'll pull up that draft.
Okay, great. That's good.
Welcome back.
Welcome. I know. Thank you. And you can introduce yourself while
Yeah.
Cheyenne's pulling that up.
Sure.
And
Chris Besden here is the applicant on behalf of Viking Development for Zero Development.
great. Thank you. Okay.
So
Before, go ahead. Yes.
she kind of touched on it when we left last time. There was discussion on drafting the decision. We went back, discussed it, felt that we could help you guys out, maybe move it along and put it together ourselves using the Goddard decision. So followed that. We even referenced the Little Sprouts one a few times just to make sure that we had covered everything that might have come up in discussions and conversations. The approach I kind of took was we had focused so much on a lot of the plans that it was my intent to kind of just reference those and make sure that we were following what we had agreed to on the plans, the landscape plan, the details, the lighting plans, the different fixtures we had talked about. All of those are kind of referenced back to the plan set that we'll hopefully be approving. And then obviously Cheryl had some comments, town council had some comments. I think it's in a pretty good spot. Happy to discuss anything you guys would like.
Okay.
Good.
Cheryl, I know. Yeah. If you want to, any of your comments.
Well, at the very beginning, we had the recodification since those other two decisions, so that's why, right in
Yeah.
the first line,
Mhm.
yeah. And then I thought it would be helpful to actually list the drawings that are included within the site
Yeah.
plan.
Right.
So that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I reviewed it all and your comments were all fine. The only thing I made a comment back to was, and I don't know if Cheyenne shared it with you, was on the construction management plan
Right.
about the number of trips. I just didn't want to be, I don't want to be so particular to something that might have some variability in it that I can't stick to.
I think, when we get to that one, I think
Yeah.
that change, that what you propose to strike is fine with me. Otherwise, I picked up some dates, which I reviewed the last peer review comment letter from Horsley Witten, and they referenced these dates of February 18th. So you agreed with that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Those are the updates. Okay.
And that's fine. It's just a matter of, there might have been a plan difference, of changes being made from a meeting that Horsley Witten got a slightly different set. But it all aligns.
Which the last revision date that you had in the chart or in the table was February 5th. So there were changes after that. So I just wanted to make sure we captured that
Understood.
in the February 18th set. Not all those drawings that are listed were modified, but I still think it's
good to have.
it's good to have the list. Yeah. And then again, these three that were included in the table were referenced in that peer review letter, which
Okay.
is why
Yeah.
I put them
I looked
here.
at them. I didn't
Yeah.
have any, fire turning. That's fine. That's in there.
Right. And then I think Cheyenne had added here about an email to Marina Fernandez, such you've reviewed that. And then under the stormwater peer review, there were two comments in that last peer review letter, which it weren't closed completely, so I put them in as conditions.
Yeah, and I was fine with that.
Yeah. Okay.
There were nothing major. Marina signed off on peer review for stormwater as well. So the way it's written is good.
And then just again for the other board members, I looked at some of our other decisions, not just those two schools.
Okay.
And so that reference to the dark sky, being more specific about that, about adding some specificity for the reduced light level.
That was good. That was something I was curious about. We hadn't discussed an actual level, so.
Right.
And we had put this 30% in for a memory care facility
Okay.
that we approved last year. So And that went through a long approval process. And then the maintenance of landscaping is something that's come up quite a bit for us, even at one of the childcare facilities. So I wanted to make sure that was covered. The protection of the trees, which again, you don't have trouble with. And then you wanted to strike in paragraph 7 after the last comma, right? Including volumes and timing of trucks.
Yeah, I just replaced it with something more, a little broader in terms of major construction milestones that might have traffic or noise impacts. Something as specific as trips, I can't necessarily control a subcontractor to exactly what time they're going to show up or how many trucks they're going to have.
Okay, I felt like this covered, and that strike was fine with me, if everyone else agrees. And then, like I said, 12 and 13 were just pulled from the peer review. And then on the last paragraph, I just made it express that we were reserving our right to amend. So
Yeah.
instead of having it be.
And I looked into it, completely fine with it. I understand it.
Okay.
Good.
So I don't know if others had other questions or suggestions.
No, I just sent something in, which was added on the front signage that we had talked about. So that was fine. That's great.
So then if we're all set with it, we can make a motion to
I would
approve it.
entertain.
Right?
Yep.
Let's
I
do
would.
it.
All right, I'll make
Sean, did you have anything any questions or?
I just wanted to follow up on one question that Cheryl made a good note about the landscape and watering. Chris, what's your intention? Is this an automatic irrigation system that you intend to have?
Yeah, we will consider irrigation systems for probably not the seeded areas, but the planted shrubs and things of that nature, kind of around the parking and in front of the building.
Okay. I think what Cheryl's calling out is the responsibility that you have, however you water it, whether it's just for clarity, we don't have to, it's just make sure we have a good understanding. No matter how you water it, we expect what you plant to live and thrive.
Yeah, understood. If that means we don't put in irrigation and we have to be out there with the hose, I understand the intent of making it survive.
That's the point that Cheryl's making.
Yeah.
So just make sure we're on the same page with it. That was it.
Okay, then if you'll take the motion, I will make a motion to approve this site plan approval in the form of the decision that we have in front of us tonight for the 0 Blue Hill Ave application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do roll call since we're all on Zoom. Maggie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes?
and Sean,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you.
There you
very
go.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
Thank you for
Good
being
luck.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, in person. So, great.
Good night.
And we'll have that. That'll be in the office. We'll get it signed and filed.
Yeah, I'll
So
work with Cheyenne once you get it signed.
perfect. Great.
Thank
Good.
you so much.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, Cheyenne. So you'll leave a copy of that for folks to stop in the office and sign.
Yes.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll make sure that it's dated. Dated before it's submitted, right? When the last signature comes in. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we now have, we were scheduled to have our we're going to have to open our 10 Bassett Street site plan approval. So I'll open that. And if I could have a motion to, that this was a request by the applicants to move until after the next meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that our meeting with them would be then, our next scheduled meeting would be on the 10th. So if I could have a motion to move the 10 Bassett Street public hearing, continue that to April 10th. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to move 10 Bassett Street to April 10th.
Great. Is there a second?
We have to have a time specific, right? So 7:05?
Yes, because we don't have another public hearing. So let's say 7:05.
At 7:05.
At 7:05. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, roll call again. Jim,
Yes.
Maggie,
yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Great, thank you. And before we move into Maytown meeting articles, I don't know, we didn't have a citizen speak on, but I just wanted to offer if there's anyone in the audience who is interested in citizen speak or public comment. Okay, great. Then we will move to our Maytown meeting zoning articles discussion. And these were the articles that we had voted on to have moved. Were the ADU article, the site plan approval article. We have a floodplain map, just update, which is a housekeeping. But Nick Milano has asked that we move the East Milton overlay zoning to, there will be a June meeting scheduled, which we can discuss this evening, options for dates on that. But he has asked, because they're really trying to keep it with so much of the budget items, sort of critical to not overly, overwhelm the warrant committee, let's just say, who have a lot that they're reviewing right now. And so I said I would talk to the board. The select board has already decided to close the warrant before I had a chance to talk to you all. So, and the warrant committee was told, and I do think the chair of the warrant committee seemed quite relieved. So, and it's a month later than what we would be, doing. I know we're all anxious to see this. We've all worked so hard, and the overlay, the public forum was really great that we held on Tuesday. So we are anxious to get that done, but I think it makes sense to let us focus on our site plan approval, the ADU articles, get the floodplain map, and then we can have MBTA, work towards MBTA, and the overlay for East Milton in June. So that being said, yeah.
Is it certain that there's going to be a June town meeting?
There is, and we did get asked, and I said I was going to ask our board. The options are June. It's June 9th or the 16th. Correct, Cheyenne?
That's correct.
Yep.
And do you know how many? Will there be other articles, or is it going to be dedicated to zoning?
I think Cheyenne. Did Nick mention any other articles that they were going to be submitted?
He did not mention other articles.
Because they are moving to the light article, the light that was at the our past town meeting. That will be on the Maytown meeting now. So I haven't heard of any others other than those two. And I did say I thought it might be a little tight on June 9th, but I understand that people start to leave. And Cheyenne, are they talking about that a June town meeting being fully remote?
He has not told me that. He just mentioned the dates in June.
So we back out a month to that from there for printing, and you're looking at May 9th. So that's a Friday. So that leaves about 6 weeks.
It felt tight. I
mean, it's fine for the overlay, but
yeah.
If we're talking about MBTA zoning, we haven't had a public meeting about it.
I mean, I think June 16 is better.
Another week is better.
Yeah, definitely.
As the preference.
And it still will be tight. It's probably going to be tight, making sure we can get public forum stuff.
But I think we should bear in mind that May 9th is really our deadline at the latest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll
And
give that
if
feedback.
we end up
Cheyenne,
getting
will
an
you give
extra
Nick
week, we get it,
that
right?
feedback to Nick on that. Okay, so with that, I don't know if the members have a preference whether we start with the ADU article or the site plan approval article.
I'd suggest the ADU.
Okay. And we have had some updates, and I'd like to invite Ms.
The
O'Donnell,
chair of the ZBA.
the chair of the ZBA, to join us. And we appreciate your work on this and attention to some items that we want to make this the best article we can. So glad you can join us.
Thank you for inviting me to participate in this. And as I said to, I think you folks at the town meeting, I am the new chair of the Board of Appeals and replacing John Leonard after his long 20 years or so of service. And it's big shoes to step into. But I am hoping that we can have a sort of better working relationship, with zoning articles that are then going to be enforced by us, by the Board of Appeals, that, we would have an opportunity to take a look. And so with that in mind, I did take a look at the ADU bylaw and the site plan review bylaw and have sent to Cheyenne and to you folks some suggested revisions. I think the ADU article is probably the easiest and the simplest and probably the one easiest to move.
Yeah, let's start with that. And Cheyenne, do you have that pulled up? Or if you could pull it up? I can't see.
Yeah. Yes.
And can you enlarge the font on that? Thank you. That's great. And so what I thought we would do with these is to sort of walk through, and you could talk about the red line items the changes that you would like to see made, and just briefly explain.
Let me just, as a preliminary, explain that I really appreciated the hard work you folks did on the draft article that was at town meeting, because that was done before there was a model. And of course, it's a lot easier as lawyers. I'm a real estate attorney. I draft deeds all the time, and I base them on the 87,000 that have been in the chain of title. So we don't like to sort of make things up. And so that was a lot of hard work that people did on that bylaw, and I want to recognize that work. But I also point out that it was done before the model, and the model is very helpful. And so there were some things that I added just because they were in the model, like the first paragraph talking about the purpose. It's always great to have a statutory reference and a regulatory reference. And so that's sort of the first paragraph that's in here. And then, so that's all new language.
And we can also say, to tell folks that the model bylaw just came out yesterday. Yeah. So literally this we've been working with a moving target. Yeah. So thank you, because we're all analyzing that. Yeah.
And I will say, just in full disclosure, I do have a client who's applying for a protected ADU in a different town. And it's been a complete horror scene about what he needs to, what one person tells him he needs to do and what the other person needs to tell him to do. So it's been very confusing. So this is very helpful. Yeah. And I also want to point out the significant difference between the model and ours is that the model talks about both protected ADUs, which are no bigger than 900 square feet, or 50% of what you've already got in your existing house. There are also, you can allow a larger ADUs with a special permit. We are not doing that. So a lot of the language in the model talks about non-protected ADUs. And so it's, I think, important to keep in mind when we're going through this, that you only are allowing the protected ones and not larger ones.
Correct.
And so some of the language in the model doesn't really apply because of the fact that we only have one kind of an ADU. It's a protected one.
Right. And that's why that language, the protected use, was important. And we had brought that directly from the regulations. Right. That's great.
So I just, in some of the language that you had in the first draft was just a little, get concerned about the purposes and then what the AG is looking at. And so I thought we were better off to just kind of essentially sort of recite what they had already in their model. But I did want to point out that in number 3, it talks about developing small, number 3 says, develop small scale infill housing that fits in the context of single family housing while maintaining the appearance and character of the town's single family neighborhoods. So that was language that you already had, and I just sort of modified it a little bit. But I think that has been your intent in the drafting, to make sure that things fit in. And so that's there as the purpose. And then the rest of the language is pretty much the same as in the model. The definitions.
Can I ask?
Sure. Sorry, John.
That's okay. Thank you for your work on this. Can you go back to that phrase that you just read? I want to make sure
In number,
Yeah.
it's,
I guess so we had written allow dwelling units on single-family residential properties or in single-family districts that are appropriate for households at a variety of stages. And you're replacing that with develop small-scale infill housing.
Yes,
What
because
is-
at number
what is-
one, we already have production to address local and regional housing needs across all income levels and all stages of life. There was sort of repetitive language, so so we do have that all stages of life language in number one.
Yeah, my question, if I could finish my question, I'd appreciate it.
Sorry.
Can I finish? Yeah. Help me understand what infill housing means. Just that phrase, infill housing.
It's from the model, but it's essentially you already got developed properties. And so all ADUs mostly are not going to be put on virgin territory. They're going to be stuck in people's backyards or in the back of a larger lot or that sort of thing. So they are all kind of described as infill housing. You're not doing a housing development with ADUs. You're filling in an existing territory.
I do, yeah, and I also realize that Peter has already taken this for a review, and prior to your changes, it was acceptable. So I just want to be careful of what we're changing.
As I said, it's from the model itself.
I understand. I heard you when you said that earlier. I understand it's from the model. And I'm referring back to the comments that Peter made to us, Meredith. I see a lot of red here. And I just, I want to make sure that we don't forget that he has already done a review of this.
But he did not have the model bylaw either when he did his review. Yeah.
Sure, I understand. Yeah, that phrase is strange to me, infill housing, but if it's from the model, I guess from an interpretation standpoint, you can interpret that to be something that, to me, describes something other than what I think an ADU is.
Right, and sorry, Sean, to Sean's point, we talked about this before is, and I'm not saying I'm not in support of that language. It's this is for the average resident who may or may not be familiar with, building.
I don't have a problem taking it out.
Yeah, no, with building terms.
It's your bylaw.
Yeah. So
Good, thank you. Yeah.
So I'm an average resident, and not just for the ADU bylaw, but when I review all of our bylaws, sometimes you do need a law degree.
We do that on purpose.
Yes, and I really think they do it on purpose because then we have to hire attorneys. Me looking at this is just from a different perspective than you looking at it. Not to say you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's just sometimes more common language is more helpful for the average reader.
Well, you
of
could
the bylaw.
scratch the word infill, and then it would just say develop small-scale housing that fits in the context of the neighborhood.
I think, Kathleen, my concern is that for a lay person that doesn't speak your both zoning comprehensive and legal terminology language, it for someone could interpret that as infill housing. Somebody might think that is something that is going to be built between existing housing that already exists. It's an odd term. It might be a common term for zoning language, but for the layperson, it just reads like it may be a housing unit built in between existing homes.
Well,
Essentially,
they
it
are.
So
They are
maybe
gonna be
taking the
between
infill,
existing
maybe
homes.
taking the word
Just take
infill out,
infill.
taking the word infill out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do assume the majority of the ADU units that we will find will be within existing structures.
Oh, I don't know. The ones that, I can speak from experience from being on the Board of Appeals and the temporary apartments that we've approved. Some of them have been additions. Some of them have been conversions of the garage. We do have an application before us for one that's on top of a garage. So I'm not so certain. And then we did have one that was a separate building in the back. I don't think you can assume that they're all going to be part of the existing dwelling.
No, I think, well, I didn't say they all would, but I think the majority of them would be. But I do understand that if there's an existing structure, there's an opportunity for a conversion. But again, the language to a layperson might sound like the structure is going to be built in between existing homes. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
So removing that word infill.
Yeah,
That's all that, I think.
Yeah, not to belabor a point, but I will.
Yeah. I see. Okay.
The goal of as of right is for the average resident to maybe not have to hire an attorney.
Right.
So
I agree.
So if the more simple it is, the easier it is for the average resident to understand.
It is legal language, though, so we do have to
Yeah.
make sure that it meets those requirements, because as we all know, zoning is legal language.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
All right. So, all right. Yeah.
So the next,
Wait, are we going section by section and kind of signing off on it?
Well, no, I thought we would be able to talk about it at the end. Like,
Oh.
let's go through everything and then we could come back to.
so the definitions, we're all sort of the same. I just, tried to clean it up so that they were all, that there were some typographical sort of issues. Like sometimes they were underlined, sometimes there was a colon, sometimes there was a period. I took care of that. We don't need to have a definition of the building code. It is the building code. You don't need to have a definition of the fire code because it is the fire code. And so I took out the ones that we probably didn't need. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the definitions, and also as a person who watches a lot of This Old House, in number 8, in modular dwelling units, I thought it was important to make sure that we described them as a building that is unit that is already in compliance with building and fire codes. That makes it a structure that's basically finished, not something that's like a mobile home that you don't want to have or a trailer that you don't want to have. So I wanted to be sure that we had that language in there, and that's from the model. Pre-existing non-conforming structure, we did not have as a definition, and we clearly do need that because I think, as Cheryl had pointed out in our discussions, that there's probably a fair number of these things that might be going on properties that would be pre-existing non-conforming structures.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
there's just a little typo at the end of that one. The NG is missing on zoning, the last word. Yeah. Simple thing.
Yeah. And then principal dwelling, short-term rental. We don't have any other longer definitions of short-term rentals. I think we're just going to describe it as whatever is in the statute. The site plan review, I wanted to make it clear that the site plan review process is only the site plan review that you have in this bylaw, not in the other site plan review one, because I think that's going to be extremely problematic. So I just sort of said with site plan review as we have in this bylaw. And then transit station, we had separate definitions for all these things, and I just didn't see the point.
Actually, some of these things were in the regs before.
Yeah.
These we took.
Yeah.
So now they've changed
just
it.
did
So we
what
have to
they
change it.
They
Yeah.
and that was part of the problem. They changed.
Yeah, and I
the
took out ferry
regs.
terminal because we're not probably going to have one.
Mhm.
So, in the regulations, I don't think we weren't clear enough, I think, in the draft about the fact that if you are on a septic system, you're going to have to comply with Title V. So it's very clear right now in C too, that if you have a septic system or a well, you're going to have to comply with Title V. Sending a notice to the Board of Health is not sufficient. I think we need to be absolutely clear that you've got to make sure that you've got that. And then I don't think, I mean, said there's a lot of red lines because it's just sort of changing.
So can I just ask you, Kathleen, on that general conditions?
Yeah.
It's 1A and 1B.
Mhm.
Should those really be 1A and B, or should those be number 1, number 2, and renumbering of?
We could certainly do that if you want. Yeah.
I just, because it's the separate entrance and the Title V aren't really connected together necessarily.
Oh, yeah, no,
You know what
I
I
think in
mean?
my last draft, I made them 1 and 2.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So
Sorry,
that's
they are.
a change. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
They
Is that
are.
what you have, Cheyenne, up there? Okay.
No, she probably doesn't because
Yeah,
I sent her a
I'm looking at
clean
something
one.
different
Oh,
on
yeah.
the screen.
Okay.
I'm looking at your clean one.
313 version.
But on the
On the clean
one I
version?
sent today, it's
It's
1
in
and
there.
2.
Oh, on the, gotcha.
Yeah, it's still
Why
dated
don't we put-
313, but it's a more recent email,
Yeah.
Cheyenne.
It came in at,
Okay.
Yeah, it was late.
Yeah, it's just the
Yeah.
It says clean version
clean
on it.
version. Okay, got it. So that's,
I like the red line too, yeah.
Yeah, I can't get it to come up. My notes won't let
Okay.
it come
Yeah,
up.
down
So in any way, in
Yeah.
any event, I did make that change.
Right,
Okay.
1 is the
So
separate
annoying.
entrance. 2 is Title V. 3 is that you can only have 1. 4 is that you can't turn it into a condo.
okay.
5 is detached unit shall meet dimensional requirements.
You think?
6 is that it's could be located, within an existing primary dwelling or an existing accessory structure, provided that any new construction of floor area complies with applicable setbacks, which you had all along. I didn't change that. The rental period in number 8 is what I thought that it made more sense to make that 3 months at a time. You can't rent it out on a weekly or a daily basis, and it can't be used for boarding or lodging or other commercial use. And the reason you had 12 months before, but I thought 3 months. If you think about it, you have grandma and grandpa coming up from Florida and spending the summer living in the ADU for 3 months. That sort of makes sense. I thought a longer period of time wasn't really very helpful. And I also think that I know that in my neighborhood, when somebody needs to do some work on their house, they're always desperately trying to find some short-term rental in the neighborhood. And so this would allow for that.
That's an item that I'm strong disagreement. I favor the ADU. I think it's a great thing for the town, but I don't agree with a term that's under 12 months. We shouldn't create such transient nature to this housing. If grandma and granddad are coming, they're not necessarily renters. If they want to stay for 3 months, they're welcome to stay for 3 months. But if the ADU is being rented, my opinion is that it should be 12 months. If you consider almost every rental period for anyone, including a college student that doesn't need 12 months of rental, the term is 12 months. So I'm not in favor of doing anything less than 12 months. I think it's important to protect our neighborhoods and the folks that live in the neighborhood, so that if someone is going to live in an ADU, at least they can be sure that that ADU is not transitioning in a period of time that's under 12 months.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sean. I wouldn't want to put that stress on neighbors every 3 months, having a new tenant come in that has to learn the nuances of the neighborhood. I think.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Most of these people bought homes in what they thought were single-family residence neighborhoods, not expecting that their neighbor was going to change on a short-term basis. So I think it's a basic protective measure that we have a period of time that's 12 months.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And I agree as well, especially since there's no owner occupancy requirement.
Mm-hmm.
If the owner was required to live in one of either the ADU or the primary dwelling, I think there would be more oversight. But because there's no requirement for that, I do think you're going to have turnover, not just of the ADU, but possibly even the primary dwelling. And again, next to me, 2 of my neighbors do have ADUs, and it works fine. But I think also it's because they're there monitoring. And to your point, one of them has family coming in from Greece for longer periods of time. And it's not a problem whatsoever. So I think for me personally, I do support the concept of ADUs, but just the short-term rental and the model, the model bylaw allows for towns to extend it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Or-
As I said, it's your
Yeah.
bylaw,
Yeah.
not mine. So it's, I don't.
For that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So
Maggie,
we'll come back.
Did you say, you're referring to the temporary apartment bylaw that your neighbor is utilizing, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yep, sorry. Yep.
And it also
Yeah, I
works.
have the same. I have a neighbor right next to me that utilizes that for their parents. It works really well. I have a neighbor 2 to us down that has the temporary apartment bylaw that they utilize, and it works very well. And obviously those folks are there for years. So there's really nice stability for all of us in the neighborhood. So yeah, I feel very strongly that 12
As I
months is
said,
a minimum.
it's your decision, not mine. So fine.
I mean, that's something that we discussed at length before, and I
Yeah.
think town meeting's and the warrant committee discussed at length, and town meeting probably will discuss at length.
Mhm.
I think I'll just mention one thing. There are situations for like visiting nurses. They go for 3-month assignments, and with bid Milton, bursting at the seams and probably in need of staff, we could ask them, are they taking in visiting nurses, and where are they finding that those nurses live? The other thing I would think that it could meet a need for is faculty that might be visiting faculty at Curry College or La Brea, because they might be coming for one semester. So it is something to think about
And
whether the shorter term makes sense in some instances.
just because we say it's a 12-month rental, that is very difficult to enforce, I think. So to your point, if a visiting nurse or faculty signs a contract for 9 months,
They're on the hook for the money, though.
they're it would be hard for the town to enforce that, and they might leave after 3 or 6 months.
Well, you raise a good question, Maggie, and I don't know if we've talked about this, but if somebody has an ADU approved, now it's I imagine this is a registered ADU, right? So it's a residential unit that's registered, and we should have some mechanism that the owner of that ADU is submitting to the town that they're beginning a period of if we're going to have a 12-month rental period, we need some mechanism of compliance.
I don't think you can legally do that. You can't do that for a single family house.
Right.
You can't require it of an ADU. And that's that's sort of the general guidelines behind the regulations and behind the model, is that you can't require anything more of an accessory dwelling unit, protected accessory dwelling unit, only the protected ones, than you do of a single family member. And we don't ask our single family people to tell us when they're renting their houses for a year.
Yeah,
So
but,
then why is it
to
in the
that
model
point, but
that you
No.
can rent for less than a year?
Well, because it's an accessory to your principal dwelling. So it's a different use.
Right. So you're
No,
not asking
so-
any
Yeah.
more of the accessory than you would of the. I don't think that
Single
makes
family. If
sense.
I wanted to rent my house out.
Yeah,
I could rent my
that's-
house out for 3 months.
Yeah, but you don't have to tell the town that you're renting your house out.
so, but
Right.
So
however,
Sean's suggesting that a person with an accessory dwelling unit has to report to the town that they're renting it out.
okay, but
Mm.
wait, but we have to, because there's an administration and enforcement provision.
Right.
So we for a single family house, we do not have an administration and enforcement provision. But however, for ADUs, so again, the state is a bit contradictory, and not to really get off subject, but is this really an unfunded mandate?
Oh,
Because now all of a sudden we're putting extra work on our building department.
It's not an unfunded mandate because it's the choice of the property owner to do it. So it is not an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
You choose to put an ADU in your backyard, you're stuck
Yes.
with the regulations. And I did add at the end, I did add administration and enforcement. And so the building commissioner shall administer and enforce the provisions of this section. No building shall be changed in use or configuration without a building permit. You need a certificate of occupancy. And, you know, the building inspector sort of applies the Dover analysis to any request for an ADU building permit. So I did add that because you didn't have that. And that's from the model, I put that in. So I think that what you're with is the fact that you have the situation where the building commissioner, somebody can make a complaint to the building commissioner that that ADU is being used as a revolving door. And that would be a violation.
Yeah, but what are they going to say? So if I have a tenant for 12 months and then my tenant says I'm leaving in 3,
Yeah.
chase me for the money, or or I'm going to sublet it, or you can
Right.
find somebody else to move in 2 seconds. The landlord is not going to chase that person. The landlord's just going to find another tenant if this temporary nursing thing is so popular. And it's
No.
not even
I'm
gonna
just
need to be
saying that
enforced
if there is a violation, that the building commissioner, somebody can make a complaint to the building commissioner. Not you, obviously. If you're the landlord, you're not.
no, I
gonna-
know, but what's the building commissioner going to say if I, the landlord, say, you know what, my tenant said I will leave amicably, or you can evict me at the cost of 10 grand. You know, as a landlord, I'm going to say, you know what, you want to be here 3 months? I thought you were going to be here for 12,
Mhm.
but you can go, and I'll find somebody else. And that's what's going to happen.
Seems to me
You
like
know,
it would
I think
just
in
be
the
a lease
interest of moving our meeting along, Meredith, I'd suggest that we consider this just to.
Yep.
I mean, I appreciate Kathleen's experience and her expertise, but I just, really what I care mostly for is the adjacent neighbors of any ADU, so that they have some protections. And
right now, they have no protection at all.
Kathleen,
I can do it as of right now.
Kathleen, listen, I would appreciate when I start to speak, if you'd allow me to finish.
I'm sorry, Sean.
I promise you I will do the same for you. It's a courtesy that I think I owe you, and I hope you would expect to owe me. But my concern is adjacent neighbors to wherever there is an ADU. And Meredith, just so we don't use too much time in the meeting tonight, maybe we could just take a look at this and have a conversation again as a board, and maybe have a conversation with council to see what we can and what we can't do. But that's my only reason.
That's a good call.
Thank you.
I just would like to
you would
point out
also- yeah.
that right now, I could file for a building permit for an ADU that's, if it's less than 50% of my house and no greater than 900 square feet, I can go ahead and get a building permit right now
Understood.
without anything at all.
Sure,
So
I'm aware.
you're plugging a hole, which you have a big one right now, because they can do that as of right. And so
Let's continue because
I'm done.
That's it?
Oh,
Okay,
great.
that was on that. Okay.
Well,
Did you have, now, questions?
I thought there
if
were a
anyone-
couple other things that. Sorry, I guess. Yeah, there was maybe a couple of cleanup things, right? So that you had.
The
included.
thing that you may have noticed, probably right now, is that I did put in timing on making your decisions for the review of the site plan, because you didn't have any timing. And so there are provisions in F, 1, 2, and 3 that allow you to impose reasonable conditions. But you have to be moving on this. 30 days after the complete submission is given, have to give a decision within 75 days unless everybody agrees that you can do a longer time. And that's really to keep these, you need to have a time frame.
That's in this
That's the
clean
newest-
version, guys.
Yeah, in F.
Okay.
And I agree that there should be some time frame for the decision, because otherwise I think this could be deemed as being too onerous by HLC or the AG, because they're as of right,
You're right.
right?
Exactly.
So, I think that's a good add.
Mm-hmm.
And I
we
think
think
the
that time is
administration and enforcement's a good add. So thank you, Kathleen. And I want to thank you for jumping on this because, as we know, the model just came out. And to go through and compare what's in the model and what's in our bylaw is, it takes time. And I know you jumped on it today and spent a good chunk of your day today working on this. And I do appreciate your efforts on it.
Yeah. And also with the timing, is that consistent with like the length of time that ZBA has to render their decision?
We do ours fairly quickly.
Yeah.
The temporary apartments, typically, we only just have like one hearing, maybe at the most. We have one or possibly two. But most of the ones that I've done, it's been one night.
But so that's good if it is one night, but is there legally a requirement just to provide consistency from one board to another board or
Yeah, I think what you want to have is a deadline.
Right.
Because people don't know when I can file my appeal if there's no drop dead date.
Yeah.
And so, I tried to pick a reasonable time, and I thought 75 days seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
In some situations, going to your site plan review bylaw, lots of the towns that I looked at had a different process and a different timing. If it was a minor project or a major project. And so I kind of picked the 75 days from the fact that it's sort of a minor thing. That's where that number sort of came from. But you could, it's your.
No, it is nice to get things moving along, check the box, move to the next. And I, as an applicant, it's really nice to move it along. But I was just thinking for consistency, because I have found that sometimes we don't have consistency. So it would be nice if ZBA had a legal requirement, or do we have a legal requirement that we should all kind of rally around?
We do, but as I said, for the temporary apartments that I've done, it's been, if the only thing is that we have to advertise.
Yeah.
And because we don't have on the zoning board, don't have dedicated days of the month that we meet.
Yeah.
Other towns do. We do not. It sort of kind of depends upon when we get 3 people to show up and talk about it. So that sort of moves around.
Yeah.
But I thought some reasonable time and 75 days seemed reasonable to me. But it's, as I said, it's your bylaw.
So I did have one question, because there was a town meeting, there was someone who stood up, and I know you had crossed it out, but I just wanted to have an opportunity to discuss this in advance of town meeting. It was the line where it says, "It is recommended that radon-resistant techniques for new construction will be incorporated into the design of an ADU." And I know radon is an issue. I understand where this person was coming from. Do you want to address that? Because I think if we do strike it out, we had put it in to the ADU.
Which one are you looking at?
This was our red line from town meeting.
Okay.
So this was the line.
Lori Stillman,
We accepted the amendment. So I just wanted to,
under D number 5,
design
yes, sorry,
standards,
yes.
see stuff.
so I just wanted to be able to, if we do take it out, that we've had that conversation of why we removed
You could
that.
certainly put it back in. I didn't have it in the draft that Cheyenne sent me.
Right. That's what I was looking at too.
So that's
Okay.
the only reason I didn't take it out.
Okay.
It wasn't there. When I looked, the one that I got didn't have that in there.
Okay.
There's lots
Could
of
have been-
versions been going around.
So this is an older version. I'm looking at one of the older versions where it had been in there, because it was the language that we
Yeah.
accepted at town meeting. So
I remember it.
So I don't know if the members feel
You certainly
Like
can't
we wanna keep
require
it in.
it, but you can.
we
you
can't
can-
require it, but
You could put it in if you wanted to in the design standards where you talk about in number 5, D5, where you talk about energy efficient features and sustainable materials are encouraged but not required. You could sort of
That's
put
what
it in
I
there.
think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
I think it was under design standards, and I think it the way it reads, it might want to be that we suggest that radon techniques be incorporated as necessary or something. I guess drawing attention to it is a good thing, but not all places need it. Like we just had ours tested using the
Plus,
kits
it
that
might
are
fall under
available.
building instead of zoning. right?
No,
No, it
no.
doesn't. I mean,
No?
I'm, you know,
Unless you
Meredith
test
knows
for it.
I've been
Yeah.
selling real estate attorney for like over 30 years. And radon is one of those things that it depends upon atmospheric conditions, barometric pressure, the time of the year, and it's all that sort of stuff. So you can test your house one time and it won't have a radon problem. You can test it 6 months later and it might.
No, but to suggest a
But-
building practice might
Yeah.
be under building and not zoning, is what I'm saying.
But it's not a requirement that they put in a radon mitigation.
It's not in the
system.
building code. I think it's fine to keep it as a suggestion, just as we were doing with other things, just to draw people's attention to it. And
Okay.
they can look at it.
Add it in number
So-
5. That
So
Yeah.
Cheyenne, can you, if I read it off to you, can you add it?
Yeah, I was gonna pull it up from the old version. We have,
Yeah,
like,
it was
6
under
different
number
versions
8,
at this
page
point.
4, number 8, item 8, D8, under design standards is where it's,
that would be now D5.
it would now be D5, yeah.
with the energy efficient
Yeah.
features. Okay.
As a separate sentence at the end?
A separate sentence at the end of D5.
Maybe number 6,
But
you're
so-
saying?
Sorry. Can we pull up, go back
I
to
don't know,
those
the one I'm
design
looking at is
standards?
5, but
Yeah, I'm looking
like
at,
we're all over the place.
would you be able to pull up the design
Yeah.
standards section? D, so we could,
Yeah, looks
So
like it'd
you'd
be
like
number
it added
6.
right there.
You want to do it as 6?
It seems like should be its own item, right? Number 6.
Well,
That's what I'm looking at. So it'll be number 7?
so what is, again, I'm having trouble seeing it. What is the item that was taken off from the design standards?
oh, I moved. You already had an entrance separate. You didn't need to repeat it again.
I noticed that too.
Yeah. Okay, that was,
It
That was the
wasn't. It
only
wasn't.
item that
It
was
wasn't
taken
a
out.
legal change. It
No.
was a. We don't need this twice.
great, great. Okay, I just wanted to double check that. That's great. Okay, so it would be, do you want me to read it off to you, Cheyenne? Is that helpful, or
Sure.
just while we have it in front of us? We're going to say as a separate item, it is recommended that radon-resistant techniques for new construction will be incorporated into the design of the ADU.
Techniques.
Great.
So
That's what
Yep.
you'd accept.
I took the opportunity, I guess you or the privilege of sending, I think Kathleen's red line version to Marion McKettrick because she commented also at town meeting. And I see that she's an attendee, so I just thought maybe we could ask her if she had any comments tonight,
Certainly, yeah.
and maybe she doesn't. But I see you there, Marion.
And if you'd like to have a comment or
She raised
continue
her
to
hand
listen,
now.
oh, she raised her hand.
Okay.
Okay. Can we let in Marion McKettrick?
Kevin.
Okay. I don't have a lot of comments, but I've been listening very carefully. Just a couple small things. By the way, it's a lot of work to do this. I didn't do it. So I want to say thank you to Kathleen and Donald for trying to integrate the new suggested bylaw with what the town was proposing. And I really felt like you'd done a lot of work on this the last town meeting, but maybe there were still a few things that needed some work. So a lot of that seems to have happened here. My own opinion is I'm thinking of the length of rentals and the limitation on length of rentals. I'm a little hesitant with the idea of a 3-month limit because somehow it seems to suggest that a lot of, it suggests that it's great to be doing 3-month rentals. I think the issue there is that there needs to be a lease for whatever the rental term you decide is appropriate, the shortest rental term. I think if somebody chooses to leave and not occupy the premises for the remainder of the lease, then the landlord has to figure out what to do about it. But I don't really think that's a concern for the way the bylaw is written. In terms of time limits, I think 75 days is more than enough time for this reason. This isn't a special permit and this isn't a variance. The time limits are sometimes longer for the Board of Appeals for those applications. They're defined by law and they're statutory. And here, this is an as of right use, but you can put some reasonable limit on how long you may spend, looking at the application and deciding, particularly with site plan review, whether it's appropriate. So I'm not sure it's accurate to compare time limits for Board of Appeals cases for variances and special permits or planning board special permits with time limits for this, since it's an as of right use. But I think it's a great idea to try to come up with a time limit. So whatever the planning board decides, but it's good to put in something there. Other comments, I like including the suggested radon language. I think it's a good idea. Anything that's a new issue that's coming up, if you can put it in as something that we should be looking at, I think it will make us look at it. And I think that's great. And really, I think the bylaw is written in an appropriate way now. I think that, if somebody is putting a small ADU within their existing house and the exterior isn't really being changed or anything, I don't see there is a reason to do site plan review there. You would have already changed that before the last town meeting. You would have excluded that type of ADU. But for everything else where you're adding an addition or you're using an accessory structure, I think more review is necessary because it's really hard to know exactly what people are going to come up with. And it does have an effect on immediate neighbors, what sorts of structures are created. And since this is a new, it's a new device, we want to make it possible to create additional small living units, but we also don't want to cause a lot of harm to immediate neighbors in doing it. So I like the balance it's struck in this. I think it's a good bylaw. And I'm sure the board will work it over a little bit more, but I think you have something really good here. Thank you for asking me. I don't have anything original to add to the amendments that you're making so far.
Thank you.
Well, Mrs. McGettrick is here with Kathleen here. Just a clarifying question. So the limit is either, half of the gross floor area or 900 square feet. So say if somebody wanted to build a brand new accessory building and they wanted a garage and then an apartment above it, is it 900 total for the first floor and 900 for the second floor? Is it 450 square feet on the first floor, 450 square feet on the second floor?
Well, how much of the
How much of it is the unit?
accessory building is the accessory apartment?
It's the so
Does the accessory apartment include garage?
No,
Garage
No.
isn't included as living space.
Doesn't.
it does, yeah. So you can have a 900 square foot garage on the first floor and a 900 square foot apartment above. So your whole structure is 1,800 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're asking what the calculation is because it's supposed to be based on the square footage within the walls of the existing structure. Does that include the garage first floor?
Yeah.
As total square footage? Is that what you're asking
Yes.
me?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
That's a
It
good
would not.
question.
I think the gross
It would
floor
not.
area excludes
would
garages.
not.
Yeah.
I have to look at the language. Let's see. Can you find it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's,
gross floor area definition excludes crawl spaces, garage, parking
Right.
areas, enclosed porches, and similar space.
I mean, that's the situation we have now with temporary apartments, is that
Okay.
the garage isn't included in the square footage of the temporary apartment.
Right, but
And-
it's not just the question actually is how do you calculate gross square footage in order to calculate what the allowable space is for
Yeah.
the
It's
accessory apartment?
Yeah.
In
you
Marion, it's
don't include
defined
the
in number,
garage.
in the bylaw in number 5 in the definitions. It's the sum of the areas of all the stories of the building height, including basements, lofts, and intermediate, blah, 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 but excluding crawl spaces, garage parking areas, attics, enclosed porches, and similar spaces. So that's right from the model.
Okay.
Does it mention unfinished basements? Just out of curiosity.
No, including basements
Including basements.
It includes basements.
and lofts.
It's interesting because there's no
Yeah.
definition of the loft and the basement. So like a basement that doesn't meet the habitable ceiling height definition is not truly a basement then because it's not habitable space.
That's a crawl, yeah. So,
Right,
but that
and then-
says, it does
then-
say compliant building height, ceiling. height.
Okay, it does say that, all right. Then,
So you
then that's
wouldn't-
different, yeah.
You wouldn't
Because-
count a crawl space, but you would count a basement.
Because here, like when you're talking, we look at our definition in our zoning code of a half story, that loft space, I'm assuming, kind of falls underneath a sloped roof. And if it falls under a sloped roof, the definition of half story starts when the wall is 4 feet tall, which is not habitable to stand up in a 4 foot tall. But that's where the calculation for 2/3 of the floor area below comes from. So I didn't look and see if they have if this gross floor area, when it talks about a loft space, if it gives a height.
Or what does loft space mean?
Right.
It certainly could mean different things in different zoning bylaws in each town.
But it has to have compliant ceiling height.
Okay, so 7 feet ceiling height is
Yeah.
Okay.
is the building
Yeah.
code
Yeah.
for occupied
that would be-
space.
Yeah.
I think a bathroom
Okay.
for
Building
6 and 8 or
department.
something like that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
there's requirements for showers, the
Right.
height of a shower.
Right.
So, Meredith, can I just bring something up about the setbacks and the dimensional standards?
Yeah.
So I attended a webinar, I think it was a couple days ago, where they reviewed this model bylaw and also had some questions and clarifying comments. And one thing is that the ADU can be built to the dimensional standards that are least restrictive. So on the setbacks, that's an accessory structure. On the primary dwelling, it's the main structure. So if you think about how that would apply, if you had an accessory structure that in a Residence C district could be 8 feet from the rear property line and 8 feet from the side property line. So that could be the ADU, and it could be 2.5 stories in height, because that's what's in our
In our zone.
bylaw otherwise. But we could modify those provisions in our bylaw otherwise, and therefore then the ADU would be subject to them as well.
To make it consistent, the primary and the accessory dwelling.
I don't think it has to
thought
be
we did that
exactly the
already.
same.
Or
Didn't we do that already? Make it
not in our
easy?
regular zoning.
Oh, in our regular zone.
Our
I'm sorry.
regular.
It has to tie to our
existing
regular zoning. And the other thing is in our regular zoning, which is something that has, if you see some of these really large houses that are built on small lots, it's because the lot coverage does not apply to a single family. So the only thing that's dictating the size is the setbacks really. And there's again, some kind of little bit of an open space, which I was rereading, which is very convoluted language. And maybe Kathleen can look at that. I read it 3 times again today. But we could put into the general or into the other sections of the zoning
And our
bylaw
other.
a lot coverage requirement. And that could address some of those. I keep thinking of the ones that were built in that new subdivision off Pleasant. They're very close. So
I
that's
did
something.
Yeah, and I think those are great thoughts. I did talk to Nick about that, and he said we would not be able to reopen the warrant to put those amendments in for the May town meeting.
But we could do it for June.
But we could do it for June. It would just
So I think it would be one new article, and maybe you think it would be 2, but one would deal with the setbacks. They're all under the dimensional standards, so maybe could be one article.
It would be one article.
One article, okay. So one which would deal with lot coverage, and one that would deal with setbacks. But I don't think we want to put it what it is for the main house. But I think
The
we want
principal
somewhere in
dwelling?
between, because otherwise I think we
8
would
feet- 8 feet
preclude
is
any
tight.
of them being done in a C district.
And right
I don't
now in
think that's
C,
what we
it's
want.
8 feet off the property line,
Mhm.
which is pretty
But an
tight.
accessory dwelling unit can't be lived in, right?
No, an
Well,
ADU?
ADU.
You mean an
No,
accessory
but you're saying
structure?
that you build an accessory dwelling unit 8 feet off the property line. That's not for the intent of any kind of second floor or first floor apartment. That's just for a gazebo or a garage or something,
No,
right?
it would
No,
be
it
an
could be an
ADU.
ADU.
It could be a garage with what Maggie was just describing. It could be that, and it could be 8 feet from property lines right now. I mean, someone could go apply tomorrow for that if they're watching. But what I'm suggesting is the issue that I see with it is accessory structures now can be in a residence C. They can be 8 feet from the side and 8 feet from the rear, but they also are 1-story height.
That's what
cap.
I'm sorry. That's
But
what I'm
that's
referring
not-
to.
This
Right.
question was asked Wednesday at the webinar, and Kathleen and I talked about this too. So now you can take the least restrictive, the height, and the least restrictive setback from the two and combine them. So I don't think that if we had the accessory today and we knew it was going to be 35 feet, that we would say 8 feet's the right dimension.
Right,
So
right.
that's why I'm suggesting we adjust it. I'm not suggesting we make it the 30 feet, because I don't think that would fly, because I think then we would look like we were precluding people from adding them. But I do think we want a little more space so that they're not right on top of the neighbor. And so, like, just so again, kind of the C's, or the residence C is the smaller district. But remember, you can't have a minimum lot size. So even though residence C is 7,500 square feet minimum lot size, we know that we have many more lots that are smaller than that.
Mine
And
is.
so, we don't want to make this overly restrictive that we preclude them from being built, but we should think about adjusting it a bit, I think. And probably also in the others, because residence A and AA, it's 10 feet from the side and the rear, and residence B, it's 10 feet from the side, 8 feet from the rear. So I think that's something. And then whether the lot coverage might be 60%, making sure it's at least 40% open, but it might be tiered also. So it's maybe that for residence C and something else for B and A and AA. And that would address the big houses too.
Big houses and small lots.
Yeah.
But I just wanted
I
to point
always
those
like
out because
percentages, because sometimes with feet, so sometimes, personally, I get annoyed with the randomness of, you have to build a fence 8 feet in or on the property line or 30 feet in. And I know I'm like special permit situation, but so I don't like the randomness of a lot of different things. I like consistency. So that's why sometimes percentages, like X percentage of your lot size should be your setback, but that could be too confusing.
Well, there is a provision if you have an unusual shaped lot, that if your depth is not deep enough, that you can have a percentage of the depth be your setback. But that, I don't know how we would do that with the accessory structure. I think I think on the accessory we should just look at a little bit of a modification, and then think about lot coverage overall, not just because of ADUs, but because of we don't have that applying to single families. I see Marion has her hand up.
Marion, yes, if you'd like to
Yeah, I just wanted to
add a
mention
comment
that
to that, thinking about
our bylaw currently does not allow an accessory structure to be at 8 feet if it exceeds 20 feet in height. So if your accessory structure is the full up to 2.5 stories, which is what a residential structure would be allowed to, or any structure, it has to be the setback for a residential structure. I still think you should look at the existing statutory language and bylaw language, and you might want to do some changes, but keep that in mind. Don't think that you can build a new accessory structure that's 2.5 stories high and have it be 8 feet from the side lot line, and 8 feet from the rear lot line, and then put an accessory, an ADU
Right.
unit in it,
Exactly.
and it'll be
That's what
fine.
you were saying,
That-
Jonathan.
You can't build
I
it
got
if
it.
that's it, if it's that
I
big.
think I'm going crazy.
Well, that's what they,
It-
that was
it gets
asked
pretty
very
complicated.
explicitly during the webinar.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Meredith was
So-
on the webinar too.
Yeah,
It was asked very
yeah.
explicitly. Then
all good.
that's what they said. So
But if it's in our building code, maybe that's.
it's in our building code.
Yeah,
We don't have
well,
a
I
building
think we
code.
should-
We have
Well,
it's a standard state building code.
And it's
Um,
in there.
So I think we should just put a pin in that because that is something I think
Yeah.
we should look at for the June meeting. But for tonight, I'd like to keep moving if we could. And so I think that was it for on the ADU, and we'll go back and we'll talk about all of this after. But Kathleen, if we wanted to move and pull up the site plan,
Well, I mean, you could, yeah, I mean, the site plan one, you probably are not gonna like because,
we're always open to listening.
but because my basic feeling on it is that all the design information should be in design guidelines and not in the zoning. So, that's sort of a major extraction from your draft. And so that's just my personal feeling. And obviously, other people disagree with it. So you should all put that back in. So I'm just saying
Yeah,
that
let's
the draft.
start with it. Should we start with the beginning of just, yeah.
So which
um,
one are we looking at, please? Your clean
This is-
version?
You could look at the
I like the red
No,
line.
I like
line.
the
The
red
red
line
line.
Pull up the
because
red line,
then
right.
we
Right,
can,
yeah, okay. She's
then
got
we
that.
can see what she is,
Version
what
clean
we
copy?
worked on and
Okay.
proposed.
Let's see.
I will say that as a basic concept, the idea of this sort of pre-submission required conferences and having a meeting and all that sort of stuff, what I'm very concerned about is the timing on our site plan approval. There are 3 bills at the legislature that all talk about 90 days. And so one of the things I got concerned about was the longer time limits that we have in our bylaw. That would be a problem if any of those bills pass. And there's been a lot of discussion at the Real Estate Bar Association and other organizations about the site plan approval process and trying to tighten it up so that it's a creature of it's a creation, not a statutory provision. And so there's just been a lot of heat about this site plan approval process. And so I thought that the timing that was in our draft was too long, and the idea of a pre-application conference that gets set up with the planning board at some point in the game just added more time. And I was worried about that we would have challenges because of that. So
Kathleen, what time do you prefer? What duration do you prefer?
I put 120 days.
On that, I think, Kathleen, if a site plan, if it comes in complete with everything that's needed, I wouldn't disagree with you that 120 days is reasonable. But the clock shouldn't start ticking, in my opinion, until it's a complete submission.
Yeah, so that's why I like the pre-application conference of some form, and whether we need to adjust the language, I think we can talk about. The reason is like when the Gardner School, who we approved tonight, when they first came to us, their approach was to do a huge cut and to get a complete level parking lot building on a pretty steep site. And we asked them to reconsider that design, and they did, but they said that, I made a comment, why didn't you go in for a pre-application conference? And they said, we didn't see that wasn't open to us, because they were just going by what's in our bylaws and our rules and regs. And so they said, we already had all of this engineered, and they kind of were not really in the interested in redesigning it all, which I think kind of puts us in a more difficult position to try and, to get a better design or a less impactful design, let's say. And so that's trying to keep it so it's more reasonable cost outlay for them to come in with a preliminary design
Yep.
before they engineer it, before they do the stormwater design and the traffic report and maybe the traffic doesn't have as much impact, but definitely the stormwater and the grading and the landscaping is going, would change a bit based on the design
But
approach.
conceptual. And I think that the best example is J.D. Wild when he came in with his proposed plan and sort of wanted to give sort of, this is what we're thinking. This is sort of the site, how it would lay out, where the buildings would be. It was really helpful. And for us to say, yeah, this is go forward. This is
All right.
great. So.
But I would say that you can't determine whether or not an application is in conformity with the master plan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
the master plan is not part of your zoning.
That makes sense.
So that,
Yeah.
so I'll redo that.
Okay. That's great.
And then as I said, if there were some typo things that I fixed, and language things, application and evidence of fee for the site plan
Before we
approval.
go there,
that kind of stuff.
Kathleen,
So-
can we come back to, I know something that you mentioned at town meeting was, this idea about the change of use, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And so I agree that something that already has to go to the Board of Appeals, may or may not need to come to us. But one of the things that really is driving this, again, is recent experience with the Milton Marketplace application, where the hours of operation are from one restaurant to another are going is exponentially 3 times longer, which means traffic or parking lot lights are on longer, deliveries might be longer or more intense. The demand for parking, may not be able to be shared as much with other users. So the impacts to the neighbors could be different just based on the type of commercial use that it is.
I see. Yeah, that's in B, in B, lowercase b, number 3.
Yeah.
Any use or change in use that requires a special permit by the Board of Appeals shall be excluded from this site plan approval.
Right, but one of the things
That's the clause that you would have some question about.
right, because where we've talked with them about odor concerns for a restaurant that's operating longer hours, more intense kitchen use.
But that's not site plan approval. That's, unfortunately, that's the use that's controlled by the special permit. So we have the request before us about odor mitigation, about lighting, all that sort of, not the lighting, but the odor mitigation, and I can't remember what else, noise, is in our application, in our hearings. Because that's not, site plan approval is approving the site.
Right. The exterior.
So you have to think about what you are looking at for site plan approval. You are looking at a piece of real estate, and you're looking at the impacts on the traffic is obviously, that's something that you would be considering. Is the parking sufficient for the use of the building? That sort of thing, except that we have parking under our special permit. I mean, they actually have a variance and then a special permit for the common
Well,
We're looking at
process.
the situation where
on the odor piece, just for example, where you put exhaust, is on the exterior of a building. You could put it, and I've seen it in some places on the city where it's put on the facade that's right on the sidewalk and grease is dripping on the sidewalk, versus going up through the building and directed away from a residential neighborhood. So that it can be exterior.
Yeah, but as I said, you have to sort of think about what you're coming in as on. And if you're coming in on to site plan approval, for the most part, I mean, it's a use as of right. And so you have site plan approval. Whereas if it's not as of right, you're coming to the Board of Appeals for a special permit or a variance and that sort of thing. So we have to look at all.
Well, this is, and this is a unique situation because it is a residential neighborhood and it needs a special permit.
Yeah.
But I would say, I think what you're trying to say is when we're looking at an impact, a change of an impact, for now, there's going to be significantly more delivery trucks, including kegs, keg deliveries, wine, much more intensive than the plate ever had. Just having an opportunity to make sure there's proper loading zones and.
I mean, the reason this one came
Parking.
to us is because they came to amend their site plan approval to enclose the outdoor space and then to add a stair. And then, the enclosure, the decision on that enclosed space, had a particular kind of use associated with it, which is what triggered it. But otherwise it wouldn't have been triggered, right? But yet and then it's a question of whether they would have even thought that there was a trigger to go to the Board of Appeals, because we're the ones who really said it should go to the Board of Appeals.
No, actually, they have that situation anyway.
Yeah.
Because they have to amend their.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a
That's a little bit
a
more
particular
complex.
process, but I would just say that site plan approval is being looking at the project and the impacts on the abutting properties and that sort of thing. And so it's like when somebody says to me, the Board of Appeals should be doing something about, making sure that they only have, 2 beverages. And that's not us, that's the liquor license.
So the way I read now in our bylaw for what triggers it on the businesses, if you change a window or a door, it triggers site plan approval, which doesn't seem, it's true. It says any change on the exterior of a building.
Yeah.
So that to me.
And some special permits come to the planning board and they need a special permit and a site plan approval. So they just don't go to ZBA.
Yes, you do have provisions in the bylaw for special permits issued by the planning board.
Yeah.
Correct. Anyway, so.
All right, so.
I'm just.
Okay, yeah, mindful of time. So that's something we'll think about, but we'll just. Discuss
That's something,
that.
as I said,
That's the rationale, yeah.
all of this is just suggestions,
Yeah,
not
great.
in cement. I
I had wanted to have that conversation because I think it was an important one to have.
But also we want to pass something.
Mhm.
And so even though it's suggestions, so say if we don't take your suggestion, then would you oppose?
Yeah, what happens at town meeting?
Yeah, town meeting, because we don't want,
We've had this discussion. I see no reason to stand up at town meeting and repeat it.
yeah.
People
okay.
can be watching this meeting and can hear the thing that I don't think we should have design standards in the site plan.
Mhm.
But, it comes to a vote, it comes to a vote.
Yeah.
I'm not standing up at town meeting and revisiting this discussion. We've already had it. And if somebody asks me, I'll say, I went to the planning board and I asked them. And they turned me down. I was heartbroken. But
And we asked her to do this. We asked her to come do this.
I know, and we appreciate that. And there's a lot of good stuff.
There's a lot of good things. Yeah.
And again, to my point earlier, this is also for an average person, because I have to read all this as an average person. And yes, more concise language is easier to understand. So I appreciate some language.
But no, you will not expect me to stand up at town meeting and
Not
sound.
to put you on the spot.
I think you did a lot of cleanup things here too.
I did.
Yeah,
Appreciate quite a bit.
Yeah.
There was some, there were some words missing and some.
Right.
So.
And I think it's good that you put in that we actually, under limited circumstances, we do have a right to deny though.
Oh, yeah.
And you put that in.
And I capped the language that's in the proposed statute, so we didn't have any trouble with adding a reason that we can't support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and the only thing I did take out is on outside consultants. I don't think you can have somebody pay for the lawyers.
It's funny because that is elsewhere in our bylaw, because Brian pulled that
That's funny.
from, I forget which section it's in right now, but it's in one of them.
As a former town council, I can tell you that you hardly ever get that legal fees covered by. Certainly, they're never covered in 40Bs.
Yeah. And stenographer too, right?
Yeah, and who could you find to be a stenographer? There's now a new AI app we just used in our last annual meeting that can tape everything, and sort of a mess, but there you go. So I will take a look at the application stuff. I will throw all the design standards back in and fix the rest of a couple typos.
That's great.
Anything else?
Let me just see if there was anything else we wanted to say. I know that you said this at town meeting and you consistent with it here under the review standards F are in removing. Just wanted you to be able to explain that here again. other aspects of site design that may be reasonably within the spirit and intent of this section, we could ask for.
Yeah, I think that is too fuzzy. It's sort of, it's a, what we would refer to, it's sort of in the it's just too big a door. That allows everything to come in.
And you think that could also then be used as some reason for a denial because you didn't get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I how somebody's supposed to know what they're supposed to be doing? Other aspects of site design. I mean, what am I supposed to be providing?
That was one of Brian's biggest concerns too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brian,
No, I mean,
yeah.
It was meant to be in the event that there's something that was unanticipated that we couldn't predict with every site. It's so unique.
You've got such a long list.
That's,
And it's hard for me to imagine what you could come up with that wouldn't be already on here. But
yeah. But it was
so as a person who never
I
filled a
thought it
blue
was-
book in the entire time she ever had an exam. But yeah.
it was accepted by the AG's office. It didn't get. Did she have a comment on that? Maybe
I don't
she did.
recall if that was flagged or not.
I
But
didn't think it was.
I can appreciate Kathleen's view on that, and Brian had
So
the
that might
same
be
one. And I
something
think
Well,
that we
no,
would-
I can too, because as an applicant,
exactly.
you
see it
know,
from
you're
an
like, what
applicant.
does this mean?
Yeah.
You know, and I might have a different taste.
You could pay
know,
me,
as-
$950 an hour to give you the answer.
Yeah.
So that would be an item that we could take out. So
Okay.
I think if that, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I know you need to move along.
Sean.
Sean, did you have anything?
Nope, I'm all set.
And then I think there were a couple of references that would have to be added back in
Mm-hmm.
with the pre-application conference and the
Yeah.
design guidelines. But otherwise, I didn't have any. I appreciated some of the cleanup and clarity and rewrite.
I mean, it is kind of hard to do because you do wear two different hats. Like when you're around the table, you're taking the position, if I was a neighbor, what would I want? But then I've also been an applicant and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want any of this.
We really
so
need to
it's,
balance.
you know, so
it's a
it
balance.
is
It's a
really
balance.
hard
It's
to
true.
do. And
That's
I mean, I would agree if I was down there with all of your strikeouts, but that's not where I am right
but
now.
it's and it's reasonable when we need to. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we do have to balance the applicant's, rights, and especially on something that's as of right,
Right.
which is this.
Yeah, that's
intended
an
for.
important consideration
Yeah.
to remember is that this is
As
as
of right, yeah. So the property owners bought a piece of property with an understanding that they have an as of right use, right? So it's not, sometimes people will buy a piece of property contingent upon approvals when it's not as of right, but as of right.
I know, and
Yeah.
I am personally in that struggle. You know, for my business, I have an as of right use, a nursery use, but I also have a landscaping use. And unfortunately, I sort of had to give up some of my as of right use for my nursery to get the
Because of the
landscape.
conditions. Yeah.
So I really understand. So I do sympathize with applicants a lot.
Thank you very much. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate your time. So
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kathleen.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Good. Good
Bye.
night. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. So should we just go? Just
You want to stick with site plan approval over here?
while we're here. Okay. So I think we summarized what we wanted to keep in, what Kathleen's going to put back in.
Yeah, I didn't have trouble with the other things that were the two things that I kind of flagged for discussion was the pre-application and the
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Just send me a note.
Okay.
But I was fine with all the rest.
Sean, are you
I
good
am, so,
with that? Because that's mostly keeping what we
Yep.
felt
I
most
am.
strongly about, and just some
And I was talking with Meredith briefly earlier about our language and what could be considered like still ours before it goes to the warrant committee. And Meredith said we had like a week. So, you know, if we get a clean version of this with Kathleen making these, basically putting some stuff back in that she took out, if it's not too much, we could get it done and get it submitted so we don't have to have a green sheet.
Yeah.
And I should have mentioned this earlier, but we have been invited to the, and it's been posted for any planning board members to go to the warrant committee meeting and present these articles. I would really love to have a clean version to give to them and have a clean version for town meeting.
That's Monday night?
No green sheets this time. We will make sure.
We didn't ask her if she could have it to us by Monday night, but
I didn't, so we can reach out and maybe.
I did mention to her actually when I spoke to her today too that the warrant committee would be discussing on Monday, and I think that's why she made this push today. So I think she probably could if we get back to her.
Can you reach out to her and just let her know that because we would like to have it to Cheyenne to make to have Cheyenne make any changes that we wanted to make. Maybe she might. I'm just thinking on the ADU if she sends it over with 3 months. We might
what if we have all of the things that were unrelated to the design standards and the pre-application be accepted? So the new red line to us will just relate to those two items.
Mm-hmm.
And then even with those as red lines, that could go to the warrant committee, right? And we could say that those were just mostly being put back.
Yeah.
Right.
Except I do kind of like her time limit.
Yeah, no, we're accepting.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
accept it all.
But Sean's point, a completed application. It doesn't say in here completed application. It's a little thing, but I think it makes a big difference.
What
looking
page
at?
are you looking at?
Page 11, top of the page. Time limits.
I like that because I do feel like sometimes we get thrown under the bus. Oh, they take so long to do this.
Yeah.
But it really.
After the complete application.
Yeah.
Where she redlined at the top of the page.
So all you have to do on number 10 then is say, if you look on page
after
10.
the submission of a completed
complete
application
Yeah.
or something to that effect.
It says on the bottom of page 10,
Mm-hmm.
no more than 90 days after the receipt of a site plan review application. You could just put the word complete site plan review application.
But are we going 90 or 120? What am I seeing?
Well, she suggested 120.
120.
Yeah.
All right, so we're changing this to 120.
It was 90 for the ADU.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we want to
looking,
go
at,
120.
I'm looking at site plan approval.
120 for the site plan.
It says 90, doesn't it?
No, I see 120.
Kathleen.
So top of page 11 is where I am. On the red line version.
Site plan approval.
Check it out.
I'm looking at what I just printed today.
Right? What's that? Am I losing my mind again?
Well, I think
I'm
on
losing
Cheyenne's,
mine.
it's the bottom of page 10.
I'm just
Yeah.
losing
I
my
have
mind.
under time
Right.
limits no less than 30 days and no more than 45 days on the red line version.
Top of 11. But I'm on a red line version that you might not be on.
This is a red line version, but I keep looking and I got the right site plan approval.
Can you enlarge
Anyway.
that, Cheyenne, a little bit?
You just go 120 days after a completed submission or something to that effect.
Under 8.
So the board shall consider.
Oh, yours isn't broken. Mine's broken up differently. Like my page breaks here for some reason.
But here it says 90. Where does
Yeah.
it say 120? Oh, there,
Right
it was
there.
just cut out, you're saying.
I don't. Did you see these?
Oh, so
strikes?
There it is, 120,
right there,
it was
yeah.
struck.
Yeah.
So you're saying go back to.
Go back to 120, but have it say completed application or completed submission or something.
Well, in Cheyenne's that she has, which is probably different than Jim's, on
I've
what
so many
Cheyenne
versions.
has on the screen, it says should be commenced no later than 30 days
After the submission of a
after
complete
the
application.
submission of a complete application.
Commence means started. That's so we can't delay
We
it
have to
more than
start
30
it within
days.
30 days.
Oh,
That
okay.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
General
okay.
site plan review of a project of average complexity shall be completed in more than 120
20
days
days,
after the submission.
yes.
And I just want to say after the submission of a completed application.
But that language is struck. And
Right.
so we
Yeah.
have down below,
But weren't we just going to put all the struck stuff back in except?
no,
Pre-
we were only putting the
The
design
the
and
application.
Well, I think we should put that back in. That's just my thought. You guys do what you want with it.
I don't mind changing the 90 to 120, but I don't think we should add all that language back in, is my point.
Okay.
But
As long as it says 120 days after a
Very
completed
good.
application, I'm good.
all right, so that's under 0 decision, and then we put complete 120.
I
If you
think it's under N, time limits.
It's under O decision. Yeah,
No,
so
it's under
so
decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheyenne
that's
just
good.
did it up here,
That's
Jim,
good.
on the
Okay.
screen. You see it?
Yeah, that's good. You can put it there too.
Yep. That's good.
There you go. Cool.
Also, regarding our next agenda item, we do have Peter on the line.
Okay.
waiting.
Okay.
Peter Jackson?
Mellow.
Oh, Peter Mel. Oh, okay.
But we have. Did you want to go through these line by line then, or did you want? Were there other
on
things?
site
No,
plan
that was
approval?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Otherwise, we're good.
Otherwise, we're good. I
Yeah.
think the other items,
Okay.
the changes, I'm fine with.
All right. So I'll follow up with those 3 things then: the timeline, the design standards, and the pre-app meeting. Right.
Yeah.
And
I have a
then.
quick question.
Mhm.
Under O, we changed it from 90 to 120 for the completed. Down here, you want me to change this 90-day period to 120-day period as well?
Right.
Right.
Right. Yes. Good catch.
Okay.
That was good.
Sounds good.
So timeline, design standards, and application. All right. That would Cheryl. That would be great to follow up with on that. That's
Okay. And then, do we need to take a vote to submit that to the warrant committee then as a draft?
Yeah, if it expedites it.
yeah. We've already sent ours, but as an updated draft.
As an
to the-
updated
yeah.
draft?
I would take a motion to send the updated draft to the warrant committee for review.
So moved. Does that work?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Cheryl,
Yes.
Jim,
Yep.
Maggie,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. Great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That actually wasn't as bad as I thought.
You're done.
Gonna be
Love it.
time wise. Okay. So now let's just step back and look at the ADU. And I think there were some proposed changes here.
I think it makes sense to keep the purpose and definitions consistent with the model bylaw myself.
Mhm. And then I was okay with the things that she removed that weren't
Right. So all those.
applicable. Building
the-
code, fire code. I didn't have an issue with those.
I think all of those are just.
I mean, the only thing I was thinking again, it may not be necessary, but it just now I'd have to go somewhere else to look. For the definition. I know the definitions don't
Yeah.
have to be here, but again, just as a regular person, if I want to build an ADU,
Which definition are you talking about? Referencing?
Bus station, commuter rail station.
Yeah,
Fire
or
code.
what did she? Maybe was it the building code?
But she just moved those, Jim. I
The
think she
building
moved them
code.
underneath transit.
So,
So then those aren't, the stations aren't
Yeah, I
totally
remember
gone.
yeah. So if it's not relevant, so that was the only.
Yeah, do we
think
keep
there's
them in or do
I
we
think
have
there's
to-
a couple of there's a typo there.
I did find it. There was a typo I saw too.
I mean, again,
That's what I was just-
I don't have a strong feeling about it or not, but sometimes having more information, even though it makes the document a little bit lengthy.
Was that the same typo I saw in merge?
Under transit, under.
Yes, that's the one I saw too.
Yeah. I circled a few others. I can
Okay,
show
edit
you.
those.
I can show you
Yeah.
if we want to run through those at the.
Yeah.
We struck the word infill, right? So that was
Yes, that was the one thing we did want to remove.
under purpose. Yeah, you already have that. Okay,
Mhm.
and then
Hey, Shane, can you make that a little bit bigger? If you don't mind. Thanks.
under another typo is in the definitions, the pre-existing non-conforming structure, which you may already picked up when I mentioned it before. Yeah, you did. Okay, the NG. And then under transit station, there's two typos. Yeah, you've got that one. You've got that one. Okay, those are.
Okay.
I thought all the general
Mhm.
condition changes were good. And she explained that that 4 was already covered elsewhere, so striking that's not really striking it. We added the radon, right?
Yep.
Under process and requirements. I thought those were good changes. The enforcement. So I think you all want to leave in the 12 months. I think we leave it and we see what town meeting wants to do with it. Personally, that's, there'll probably be just as many opinions there. And we'll see how the vote falls,
It's
Yeah.
fine.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, can we go back to 4 real quick? I'm a little hung up on that. C regulations 4 with the accessory structure within the same district, whichever results in more permissive regulation.
Yeah, because that's what the
Right.
requirement is.
That's what, to
So
Cheryl's
That's what
point,
I was
she was
getting at
talking
earlier.
about
I
with
get it. We have to
the
do that.
difference.
We can't.
That was
Yeah,
why I
we get
wanted
the-
to make that adjustment in
Because it's
on our separate zoning articles.
Yeah.
And I do think we should do that for June.
and that was
This is
emphasized.
bad news
Peter
if we-
Mello.
if this goes.
If we don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that really was driven home at the webinar. And if you wanted to just hear that, you could watch that. The recording is posted, I think. It's uploaded now.
All right.
But as soon as I heard that, I thought we need to do this.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a workaround for this, but I guess there is none, huh?
And that is the word.
Unless we
that's-
change
that is
our-
it.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay, so is there anything else? Sean, did you have anything else on this ADU?
No, I think everything that we've discussed so far tonight I have nothing more than what we've talked about. I'm good.
Okay.
So do you think we should send the warrant committee a red line version so it's easier for them too? To see the difference between what we had before, which they reviewed?
Make sure you send it just one, so they're
Definitely
not
helps.
reading the right.
Maybe we send
sheet
it both
music.
ways.
Ah, don't do
Maybe if
You
they
mean both ways?
send a
Final
clean
version.
version
and red
and a red
yeah.
line
I
version,
think that makes sense.
so they can look at the red line, but if they want to cross-reference it and say, what was it before?
Mm.
Or what were the changes? They'll be able to see.
But since it was technically sent back for further
True.
review,
We don't need to do that.
it's really a new
new.
document.
True. I think if you want,
but-
I'm fine with it just going
Just
that
sending
way
it
too.
But
Maybe it's less confusing for them.
It could be less confusing because they should be looking at it with clear eyes.
Franchise,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine with me.
And they're much more familiar with it now that
Right.
that all of with the various amendments.
And I think maybe we should make them aware that the model bylaw is available if they want to look at it
Mhm.
on the.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we
.gov.
could send that.
We could
Yeah.
send it to them too. Yeah.
Right. Great, good points.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion to submit the revised ADU language to the warrant committee.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
Sorry.
Great. Roll call vote on this. Cheryl,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Maggie,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. Great. Okay. Thank you very much. So now,
So
Yes, did you have anything
So
else
just
that you wanted
what gets
to-
sent to, what gets sent to the warrant committee, can that be sent to us as well? So we're all working off the same?
Yes, Cheyenne, when,
Please.
we'll have it
please.
sent to you, Cheyenne, and then if
Yes.
you can distribute it to everyone, that would be great.
Definitely.
Okay. And Sean, is there anything anyone else has before we discuss moving to executive session?
I don't have anything.
Okay, and everyone's out of the room at this point. So Sean, just stay with us. I will.
We have one person on Zoom.
There's one person. Okay.
Oh, they left now.
Okay.
And do these guys have to leave?
They will
They
be
will
on
have
there.
to,
Yeah. So I would like to now move that the planning board convene an executive session pursuant to GL section 30A, section 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to litigation entitled Bacardi et al.
Recording stopped.
Versus Planning Board et al. Norfolk Superior Court, civil action number 2482C V00515, because an open meeting may have a detrimental
Hey,
effect.
Meredith,
Yes?
question for you. I know that the Milton Access TV people left, and I did stop the recording, so that won't be saved. But are we still streaming? Like, if someone's watching this on YouTube or Facebook, is it still going to be on YouTube or Facebook live?
Milton Access is still here, so it will not be.
Anybody hear us?
I can hear you.
Julia can hear us.
She was still reading that.
I was still reading we haven't adjourned yet.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, great. Sorry. With respect to litigation entitled Bacardi et al. Versus Planning Board et al., Norfolk Superior Court, civil action number 2482CV00515, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the planning board will not reconvene in open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
Cool.
Okay, if I can have a motion on
So
that.
moved.
Moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Maggie,
Yes.
I
Jim,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself, yes. We're now officially in an executive session.